This is the BBC World Service. I'm James Reynolds with OS, live from our studio in central London. Buckingham Palace says that doctors for Queen Elizabeth are concerned for Her Majesty's health and have recommended that she remain under medical supervision. The palace says that the Queen, who is 96 years old, who's been on the throne since 1952, 70 years, remains comfortable at Balmoral. That's her residence in Scotland. The Prince of Wales, Prince Charles, and his wife Camilla, the Duchess of Cornwall, have arrived at Balmoral, and within the last hour or so, we've seen a flight landing in Aberdeen Airport with two of the Queen's other children. Prince William was on board as well. The UK Prime Minister, Liz Truss, says the whole country will be deeply concerned by the news from Buckingham Palace. My thoughts, she says, and the thoughts of people across the UK are with Her Majesty the Queen and her family at this time.
Hello, this is Julie Cantor with the BBC News. Buckingham Palace in London has said that Queen Elizabeth is under medical supervision after doctors became concerned for her health. The heir to the throne, the Prince of Wales, and other members of the royal family have gone to Balmoral in Scotland, where the Queen has been residing for the summer. The British Prime Minister, Liz Truss, who was only appointed by the Queen on Tuesday, said the whole country would be deeply concerned by the news. Our royal correspondent, Nicholas Witchell, has been following developments.
People will take this very, very personally because clearly there is reason for great concern, and people will find it, I think, even quite disorientating. The thought that the Queen's life may be moving into its final chapter, we don't know. But clearly the facts speak for themselves, the fact that all of her children and the Cambridges and the Sussexes are travelling to Balmoral. Well, they wouldn't be doing that if there wasn't some good reason for it.
Ukrainian officials say their soldiers have liberated more than 20 villages and advanced 50 kilometres into Russian-occupied territory. A senior general said particularly strong gains had been made in the northern Kharkiv region, but that villages had also been recaptured in the southeast. Ukraine's claim of battlefield success came as the US Secretary of State paid a surprise visit to Kyiv. Antony Blinken held talks with President Volodymyr Zelensky. The US had announced earlier that it would give another $700 million worth of aid to Ukraine. The Kenyan Parliament is sitting for the first time since the disputed elections last month. Members of the upper and lower houses, the National Assembly and Senate, have been sworn in. Richard Hamilton reports.
On Monday, the Supreme Court in Kenya upheld William Ruto's narrow victory in the presidential poll after the result was challenged by his rival, Raila Odinga. A coalition called Kenya Kwanza, led by Mr. Ruto, is vying for control of Parliament against another movement known as One Kenya, headed by Mr. Odinga. Neither of the two groups won a clear majority. Emerson Kingi from Mr. Ruto's alliance has been appointed as Speaker of the Senate, but debate is still continuing over the appointment of the Speaker of the National Assembly.
Local government officials in Spain's Canary Islands say about 1,000 migrants have died so far this year in their attempts to reach the archipelago. The Canaries are a popular target for people seeking to cross from North and West Africa to European soil in small motor-powered boats. But unpredictable weather and currents often blow them off course or the boats capsize. 11,000 migrants have attempted the crossing this year. World News from the BBC. Former President Donald Trump's advisor, Steve Bannon, has been charged with 6 criminal counts in New York State. The charges relate to Mr. Trump's efforts to build a security wall along the US-Mexico border and include money laundering and conspiracy. Mr. Bannon was originally charged 2 years ago for defrauding donors in a fundraising drive to help construct the wall. He was later pardoned by Mr. Trump in the final hours of his presidency. The authorities in Gambia are investigating a possible link between liquid paracetamol and the deaths of dozens of young children in the country. In the last 3 months, there's been an increase in kidney failures amongst boys and girls under the age of 5. Thomas Nadi has more details.
Dozens of children have died in the country in the last 3 months. Health authorities have confirmed that autopsies performed on the dead children suggest a link with paracetamol syrup, but they are also suspecting E. coli bacteria could be a possible cause. The symptoms exhibited include an inability to pass urine and a fever that can result in kidney failure within hours. The government has suspended the use of all paracetamol syrup in the country and urged people to use tablets instead.
The court in Nepal has issued an arrest warrant against Sandeep Lamichhane, the captain of the national cricket team, after he was accused of rape by a 17-year-old girl. The alleged offence took place in a hotel in the capital Kathmandu last month. He's denied the charges. Lamichhane, who is currently playing in Trinidad and Tobago for the Caribbean Premier League, told the Cricket Association of Nepal he would return home to defend himself. The English Premier League football club Chelsea have appointed the former Brighton manager Graham Potter as their new boss. He replaces the German coach Thomas Tuchel, who was sacked this week despite winning last year's European Champions League. BBC News.
This is James Reynolds with you on OS from the BBC World Service. The Queen is under medical supervision at her residence in Balmoral, in the countryside of Scotland, after doctors say they became concerned for her health, according to a statement released earlier today by Buckingham Palace. All of the Queen's 4 children are gathering at, or are travelling to, her Scottish estate, which is near Aberdeen. In the last hour or so, we saw a jet land at Aberdeen Airport, thought to be bringing Prince Andrew, the Duke of York, Prince Edward, the Earl of Sussex, who are 2 of the Queen's 4 children, along with Prince William, the Duke of Cambridge, her grandson. And their cars will be making their way towards Balmoral. As I look at one of my screens, I can see the entry to Balmoral and some recorded pictures of a convoy of about 6 vehicles or so making its way through Aberdeenshire. And we've been receiving and monitoring reaction from all over the world. The Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, says, "My thoughts and the thoughts of Canadians across the country are with Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II at this time. We are wishing her well and sending our best to the royal family." We've also seen in the last few minutes from the White House press spokesman who says the President's thoughts are with the Queen and her family. With me in the studio is our correspondent, Rob Watson. And Rob, take us through the day as it has happened.
Well, I was just looking at my watch, and it's 5:10 here in the UK. And it was at about 12:30 that, people will look back at that moment maybe where we've got a statement from Buckingham Palace, very short statement, but saying those words, serious concern about the Queen's health, but that she was comfortable and resting. Then, very, very shortly afterwards, you saw the Queen's immediate family making their way to Balmoral, and I think that just suddenly gave you that sense of how serious potentially this was, because all of the Queen's children were either with her or on their way, and of course one of her grandchildren is on her way there, Prince William, and another one, Prince Harry, is also making his way there. So that gave you that sort of sense that something doesn't feel quite right. And then all of that was sort of amplified and echoed, if you like, by the reaction of British politicians, because at 12:30, I mean, it seems like hours ago now, I was at Westminster and there was this big debate about energy policy, and suddenly the kind of tone completely changed. The Speaker of the House of Commons read out a message wishing the Queen well, and you sort of felt that you were in a different kind of territory, if I could put it that way.
And we've been reporting that the Queen's immediate family, she has 4 adult children from Prince Charles, Princess Anne, Prince Andrew and Prince Edward, are either there or making their way there. For those who don't know Balmoral or don't know that geography, can you paint us a picture of that estate in the countryside?
Yes, we kind of, living here, you sort of take it for granted because you see it so often. But it's a Scottish hunting lodge originally, I think is what it was. It's beautiful. It looks like it sort of looks like a sort of, I don't know, like a kind of castle, like a fairy tale castle in many ways. It's got a couple of turrets. It's surrounded by beautiful hills, and it's in a part of the Scottish countryside called the Cairngorms National Park. Some pretty high mountains there by Scottish standards, and it's inland. It's about an hour and a half's drive from from Aberdeen Airport, and there's fantastic fishing nearby. That's why I've been nearby. I've been salmon fishing nearby, and there's if you like that kind of thing, I think there's fantastic shooting on the Balmoral estate. People have done that. I mean, certainly the Queen and her guests have done that. So it's just, if you had to sort of dream up, a Scottish castle in an agreeable location, you could do a lot worse than Balmoral.
And it was a place where Queen Victoria, back in the 19th century, would spend years and years. She loved it so much. And what role has it played for the Queen? When does she spend her year there?
So she spends a vast chunk of the year there, mainly over the summer months, because as anybody who knows Scotland or Britain well would say, if you had to choose the right time to go to Scotland, given the propensity for rain and not such nice weather later in the year, July, August, September, October, which is the time she spends there, is probably best. And it's really interesting. They invite guests up. Apparently, there's a sort of mixture of informality and formality when you're there. There are sort of games. There's
Highland games.
Yes, Highland games, and I think there are games inside. People play old-fashioned.
I see. We've seen those on the Crown.
Yes, it's sort of the Queen at rest. Apparently, in the past, the Queen has prepared picnics for her guests. I think there's one famous guest who didn't like it very much because I think it's sort of very cold and sort of Scottish. If that's not your taste. I think it was Prime Minister Tony Blair's wife Cherie thought that it was all a bit uncomfortable staying at Balmoral, but it's obviously very much to the Queen's taste, and I guess it's got to be one of the top invites in this country. To spend a couple of days at Balmoral.
There is, isn't there? There's that British tradition of the Prime Minister and the Prime Minister's partner, and it's usually the wife. Historically, apart from Margaret Thatcher and Theresa May, have had to spend a sometimes awkward weekend there. But looking at the Queen and her Prime Ministers, you and I were just chatting 2 days ago about that handover of power in the UK and the fact that the Queen, the sovereign, is the central figure in that handover, and that Liz Truss and Boris Johnson flew up to Aberdeen. Talk us through that today.
Yes, I mean, it's important to remember in a constitutional monarchy, in a parliamentary democracy, that it is the Queen. She's the head of state. She's not the head of government. But because of that role, I mean, she is the one who accepts the Prime Minister's resignation, and she is the one who appoints the new one. I mean, she doesn't choose them, right? I mean, it's the politicians and the people that do that. But for it to be legit, I guess, if you put it that way, it can't be done by Zoom. I mean, in some ways, it's immensely old-fashioned. And that's why, even though she's had issues with mobility, it was felt that it was better to bring the two politicians to Balmoral rather than for her to come back down to London. And interestingly, that photo you're talking about, I mean, yes, she looked frail. Yes, she looks rather, more diminutive than ever. But actually, she looked fantastically kind of engaged with the whole thing. And then we learned that Liz Truss had spent at least 30 minutes or so with the Queen after the sort of shaking hands and the sort of official bit of the day, if you like.
I should just say that in the last few minutes, we have seen reports that that convoy of cars carrying at least 3 members of the royal family, Prince William, the Duke of Cambridge, Prince Andrew, and the Sussex, 1 grandson and 2 sons. Those reports say that that convoy has made it through and is in Balmoral now after an hour or so's drive from Aberdeen Airport. A journey, of course, you and I followed in a separate way on Tuesday, that journey that the two politicians made. And what role have Prime Ministers played in the Queen's life? What role does the Queen play in Prime Minister's lives?
Well, it's an extraordinary role. I mean, the first thing to mention, of course, is just the sheer number of them, right? I mean, the first Prime Minister that the Queen dealt with was Winston Churchill. I mean, but if you think about it, the current Prime Minister is the 15th one. I mean, she wasn't born. Liz Truss wasn't born when the Queen and the Queen's reign began. I mean, you have to really kind of puzzle your head and think about this. So the important thing to remind everyone is that the Queen is very much head of state, not head of government. But in a constitutional, in a monarchy with a constitutional democracy, she does have a very intimate relationship with the Prime Minister. So, for example, even though she doesn't tell them what to do, she gets a weekly report. Now, during COVID, that was mainly over Zoom. But if you think about it, ever since 1952 in Winston Churchill, pretty much once a week, there have been the odd break, once a week the Prime Minister travels that very short journey from Downing Street to Buckingham Palace and talks to the Queen about what's going on in the UK and in the world and in government. And I think it was former Prime Minister John Major, don't hold me to this, but he said the best thing about meeting the Queen was that she never leaked. Anybody else would leak, but not the Queen. And I think it was also John Major who said that, it's a shame that she was above politics because she would have made an utterly brilliant minister. If you had to give somebody a portfolio, you might give one to the Queen.
Rob Watson, do stay with us. Rob Watson, the BBC's political correspondent with us. This is OS on the BBC with me, James Reynolds. We are live from our studio in central London. Let's take a look.